Thank you, Ingmar, for the introduction. I would like just to say that there is at least one positive consequence of the COVID, the fact that almost 90 people from everywhere in Europe was much easier to connect, to discuss, I think, a very important and interesting topic as it is the quality of life in our territories. I'm Carlo Sessa. I was the project coordinator of the ESPON Quality of Life project, and I have prepared a presentation for the introduction, and we stick to the slides. So I hope not to be too much boring to present the concept, and then I will have also the opportunity to participate later in the roundtable to add consideration. Anyway, apart from my presentation, I suggest for those that want to go deeper or to grasp further the concept, really to read the working paper that has just been published by ESPON, Is Our Life Good Enough? Because you will find there all the explanation. So thanks for next slide, please. Okay, so why do we need to measure quality of life at different territorial levels? That's the question. Measuring progress only by means of gross domestic products or income indicators is not enough to address all the things that matter in the lives of citizens. That's the first point. Enhancing quality of life has become a key objective for policymakers at different territorial scales, national, regional, local, along with an increasing demand for the participation of citizens in the political process. And so basically territorial quality of life can complement economic and social cohesion indicators to measure territorial development and address citizens' quality of life needs and expectations. So this is the next slide, please. Those were the starting point of the analysis. Then what is our definition of territorial quality of life? That was the first part of the research. Basically, we went to the very basic level. If you like philosophical, we start with some philosophy. For any living being, so not only human beings, but any living being, life is a survival plus flourishing in a supporting environment. So measuring territorial quality of life means measuring the capabilities needed by all living beings to survive and flourish in a place, based on the economic, social, and ecological conditions that support life in that place. This is represented with the conceptual territorial quality of life model, encompassing three spheres: personal sphere, socio-economic sphere, and ecological sphere, and three quality of life dimension, what we have named good life enablers, the condition that enable a good life in a place, life survival maintenance indicators, for example, intuitively health indicators, and life flourishing indicators, which means connected to the aspiration of people and living being to flourish. So by crossing three spheres, personal, socioeconomic, and ecological sphere, and three dimension, good life enabler, life survival, and life flourishing, we have a matrix of quality of life domains, and we have identified 22 of these subdomains. Next slide, please. Basically, I introduced this concept, which is further explained in the paper. As I said, I don't go in all the detail of the subdomains, but basically you see the blue one, good life enablers, are the condition for living, and life maintenance are personal health, socioeconomic health, and ecological health condition, and life flourishing are personal flourishing, so personal aspiration, community flourishing, the attention to the flourishing of the community, and also the concept of ecological flourishing, which encompasses biodiversity and the health of the ecosystems. Next slide, please. So what are, next slide. Okay, what are the key messages for the policy makers of this approach? First, good life enablers for the people living in a place matter. The first task for policymakers is to improve the quality of housing, health, education, mobility, digital infrastructure and services in all places, and access to work, consumption, social and cultural activities. These are basically the sequence of domains, subdomains that we have included into the good life enabler dimension. Personal flourishing, second message, can be measured. It's not a matter of subjectivity. You can measure if you, of course, you design and address the collection of the data for doing that. The second part of the task is so measuring a citizen's health and flourishing by means of objective and subjective indicators, improving the surveys at territorial level for this. The third message is community flourishing for territorial quality of life is important as well. The sense of belonging and how trustful citizens are of other people and institutions is a key aspect for living well in a place, as something that I think we all experience in our life. The fourth message is that also ecological flourishing is key for the quality of our life. Basically, living in harmony with nature requires the measurement of ecological flourishing by means of new environmental indicators to monitor the health of ecosystems and biodiversity in urban and rural areas. Next slide, please. So, based on this concept, we have developed a tool. A dashboard tool is an Excel tool which take all these categories, 22 domains, and we have developed the tool implementing it at the European level with data collected and organized at the NUTS3 level. In doing that, we have done a work of identifying the data availability and, as a result, the data gaps, which you can imagine are greater than the data availability, of indicators that can be used to measure the concepts that are represented by the 22 domains. So we have on average 2, maximum 3 indicators for each domain. And we have a data tool that is about 60, 70 indicators. Of course, we don't have the time to enter into the detail of which indicators have been used. It's not the most important which indicators have been used, because for us was the first pilot experiment and the need to understand what is the situation, the state of art. But this is a state of art that you can imagine is necessarily to be improved in the future. So you can have the detail of the indicators if you go to read the Is Our Life Good Enough working paper. Next slide, please. It's important to understand that this dashboard tool can be applied at European level, and we have done this mapping. You cannot see, this is the summary table of the indicators used at the European level, but the tool is not done only for analyzing the thing at the European level for NUTS3 region. The tool can be applied at every territorial scale and has been applied actually in fully in one local case, Barcelona, where we had all the data to apply the tool and successfully, which will be not presented in the case studies, however. You will see in the other case studies the situation in other areas where the use of this tool has been one of the arguments of the analysis. It's important to understand that it's a tool that is flexible to be applied at different territorial levels. Next slide, please. So for basically the tool, the results of this, and again, I don't want to go to read in detail all these results, has been done producing maps at NUTS3 level for the Life Enabler Index, which is the dimension of good life enabler, the combination of housing, health, education, and so forth, indicators. I don't know really, this is a question, this is an issue that we will take in the roundtable later. I don't know really the situation of Slovenia, because I should magnify the Slovenia NUTS3 region there for understanding how they compare with the others. But I think that this is not the most important thing to discuss, because the data are useful to have a first picture, but this is really a first picture based on the data that are available. There are many data gaps that should be filled and data to be improved for having progressively more reliable picture of quality, territorial quality of life in Europe. So I would suggest not to rush to make evaluation about what is the quality of life of one region against the other based on the pilot data, but to take instead the objective to improve the data for having increasingly reliable picture to be used in policy. Next slide, please. So we have the next slide. We have the same map for the life maintenance index about healthy personal life, healthy economy, and the healthy environment, Europe at regional level. That's 3. Next, please. And the life flourishing index, fulfillment of personal aspiration, community flourishing, and ecological flourishing, Europe and regional level. And that's 3. This is the map to be taken with greater caution, as I said before, because overall this dimension must be interpreted with caution because of low data availability, especially about ecological flourishing, because a new environmental indicator about ecosystem health and about biodiversity is something that needs a lot of work to be developed. Next slide, please. The combined picture of the 3 dimension is this one. It's a nice picture, but again, the quality and granularity of territorial data needs to be improved for several domains. So I would not fall, personally, I didn't fall in love for this map, simply because I think that the approach is very good and interesting. We need to work for improving the data, basically. So we can go on to the next slide, please. So the key message for all this for policymakers, we get what we measure. This is a rule of management. Measuring, so territorial quality of life, is not just a venture for experts and policymakers. Because we get what we measure, policymakers need to ask citizens what they want in life to validate the use of the territorial quality of life indicators. It's not only a matter for experts, the value judgment about which are the aspects that need to be measured. Measure of call will be implemented, therefore, by engaging citizens in the design process. This is called in our approach a citizen-centric approach, and is triggering pilot territorial quality of life living lab in different regions across Europe. We are really at the beginning of this, so we will discuss also in the roundtable this point. And the second point, the second message is the aim of this virtual roundtable in particular. Quality of life needs to be integrated in territorial planning practice at different geographical levels and in various policy domains. Please go to the next slide, because this is the argument that we will develop later. What I mean by citizen-centric approach to measuring territorial quality of life. First of all, the quality and granularity of data, as I said, is essential for measuring meaningful territorial quality of life indicators. This would require a new data commons approach, in which the data, quality of life data, are considered commons knowledge, involving citizens in defining what the quality of life means for them, initially qualitatively, but then to think about what you measure about these qualitative aspects. And also to continue to involve the citizens in data co-design and collection activity to the extent that this is appropriate, because for example, some of the ecological flourishing indicators could engage the citizens into citizen science kind of approaches for collecting data about the state of the environment, or other approaches would be to have more systematic surveys about the subjective well-being of the citizens. And so this is for improving the subjective and fact-based evidence that is needed for measuring quality of life. And so basically the approach should flourish into a network of territorial quality of life pilot living labs that can be integrated, and we will propose, and we'll have the time to discuss this in the roundtable, I guess, to twin our approach with existing approach that use a citizen consultation deliberation platform, in particular the Decidim platform that has been developed in Barcelona and in other cities. Basically, in this way, the new citizen-centric approach can enable a new wave of representative deliberative processes that focus on the selection and use of quality of life indicators across EU. Next slide, please. Sorry, I was a little lost. This is the last slide. This is the scheme, which is explained in the paper that I mentioned before, this vision of going towards a territorial quality of life accounting basically. You see these boxes that are put in a circle around a core element, which are these living measurement labs of territorial quality of life. There are 4 components: the policymakers that have policy programs, what we want to achieve with the policy strategy, for example, and that could be connected to the territorial planning, these aspects. But then on these programs, there is another question, which is why and how and to what extent territorial quality of life will be improved by the program. And so how this relates to expected quality of life needs of the people. And this is a matter for the territorial quality of life accounting managers. We will discuss what could be this new profile of people taking care of this aspect. Then you need the data experts, the statisticians, the statistical offices to answer the question how we can measure achievement and impacts of this policy program, but in relation to the quality of life indicators that are relevant for the people. And all this process need to engage the different actors. So it's a participatory project in which you need to understand who to engage and how to engage in an effective way, the stakeholders and also the citizens, at least some representative group of citizens to participate in this co-design approach. So I have completed the presentation. In the next slide, there is simply my thank you for the attention and my email that I think is possible to write me. Thank you very much.